Hey, it's Sean Fennessy, one of the hosts of the Prestige TV podcast. HBO's Barry is back for a fourth and final season, and that means I'll be back recapping the show with co-creator and star Bill Hader to dive deep on the themes, scenes, and major moments in the series. Bill will provide insight into how every episode was made and why it's ending. New Prestige TV Barry recaps will go live every Sunday night when the episode ends, so make sure you're subscribed to the Prestige TV podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Read, Write, Own, Building the Next Era of the Internet, a new book from entrepreneur and startup investor Chris Dixon. If you're listening to this podcast, you know what it's like to be part of a community of fans. You value the people who play, perform, and create for everyone. Well, what if there are more ways to support them, more ways to be a fan? And what if you had even more ways to connect with the teams, artists, and other creators that you love? Even though creators make the internet valuable, how much value do they get for their work? Well, that's mostly up to a few big tech companies. Shouldn't creators get more from the platforms they make successful? More value, but also more say, more control, more ownership? Read, Write, Own explores an alternative future for the internet, one that reclaims control for creators, fans, listeners, and gamers, the people who not only use the internet, but make it useful. Read, Write, Own imagines an internet built by us for us. So order your copy of the book today or learn more at readwriteown.com.
I need supports to have to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. I'm Chris Ryan. I am an editor for TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, I love what he did with cable in the 90s. It's Andy Greenwald!
It's a special honor to be here this morning. It was touch and go for a minute there.
Go!
You know?
What's up with you, man? It's been a minute.
I want to apologize to everyone.
We didn't
do a show on Thursday, which is not us. We are known as the most consistent pop culture podcast on the internet, I think, until recently.
Yeah.
And despite what people may think, I was not flying to Sweden. I was not back in Japan. I was just real sick. Non-COVID edition.
Yeah.
And I spent the week kind of like
every NBA player, non-COVID illness.
Non-COVID illness. And but it was not load management. And I did spend the week kind of like Kendall spent the first 30 seconds of last night's episode of Succession. Like, it was awful. But I do think people who have parasocial relationships to us should know that, Chris, you were my North Star. Like, you were always available on text. You were checking in. You were making sure I was getting fluids.
Yeah, just a text butt pat. That's what I was doing. I was like, you got this, kid.
Yeah, I appreciated that. That got me through. And as did the steroid injections. So, you know, I hope I don't get tested by the league after this podcast. But I'll do my best.
You are like LeBron coming back. They thought you needed surgery, and instead you're out here playing 41 minutes a game.
I did get my blood changed.
You know, you gave me the option of recording on my own on Thursday.
I did.
Be it solo. And for a second, I entertained one of those all-time classic, I talk for 11 minutes at a time, and Kaya goes, that's cool.
Oh, you mean the Greenwald?
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard you do like 22 solo, and I was just like, this is absolutely bad shit.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But I can't do this without you. Not at this time of year when it's Succession time, when it's Barry time, when it's 100-Foot Wave Season 2 time.
Listen, and considering how generous Mr. Zaslav has been to us, the fact that we were unable to cover the Max announcements last week.
We have a lot to get through. So what we're going to do today is Succession and Barry's first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Did you watch both?
Of course.
That's why you're the best.
Well, when you're sick, you can watch television, as it turns out.
I didn't know that. I didn't get the vibe from you that you were like, how can I make the most out of this time?
I did go to my safe spot. I did start watching Ozu movies on Criterion. I 100% did that. But there was a lot of sick time.
And so we'll do Succession, Barry, and then if we have time at the end, if you're still with me, maybe we'll do some Max rebrand. But we can also save that for Thursday. We also have Top Chef.
And another casualty has been our Daisy Jones recap, which is going to happen. That got pushed also.
Is it?
Yeah, look at me.
Yeah.
Look in these slightly watery red-rimmed eyes.
Do you want me to recap last night's Succession?
It's not what I want. It's what the listeners want.
I don't know that my recaps really serve much of a purpose. This isn't exactly...
I think it's table setting.
A Russian novel.
I think the listeners who aren't in traffic right now, they use this time. They make a cold drink for themselves. You know, they get the pillows set up right.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. Broad strokes.
Mm-hmm.
Shiv's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth noting. That's Tom's baby, right?
Yeah.
Right. I just wanted to make sure in my mind because time is really weird on this show. So it's
right.
like it's been 3 months since season 3. I was just trying to remember. Shiv has not had any other paramours.
Do you think Ashley Zuckerman's coming back? He's the Robert Langdon contract is off. And what's the guy's name on the show?
Nate.
Yeah.
I think he might.
Do you ever watch the what are they called? Like the extra content they film. I forget it's the E something. The promotional packages that they do with the cast, and they'll show up like on autoplays. Or HBO will run them.
Yeah.
And there's one where they have the cast. You know, they have all the cast members for like 40 minutes. And they ask them all the same 10 questions, and they hope to mine for gold. And there's one where there's like a lot of good insults on this show. What's your favorite? And none of them remember any of them. So it's like 2 minutes of them remembering like buckle up. Fucklehead or something.
Right.
They remember that one.
Right.
And then the rest of them, they remember like Nate saying something about being a basic.
You don't watch a lot of YouTube, do you?
I watch a lot of YouTube that I get through Facebook.
Okay. Because there's like, this
content.
is now like most of what celebrity journalism is on YouTube is just people, two people from a cast in a room. And they're like, why don't you two look up your Google results?
That seems fun.
Okay. So anyway, Shiv's pregnant. We're at this wake at Logan's apartment, which will serve as the setting for the entirety of the episode.
Yes.
And we've got Marcia, who was in Milan shopping forever. She's back, and she's sort of running this. She had a closer relationship with Logan than Kendall at the end. They were still speaking, quote unquote, intimately.
Every night. Kind of like us.
Yeah. And at the wake, the C-suite is trying to figure out who will be the next CEO. Frank discovers a piece of paper, dated unknown, that indicates Logan's wish that Kendall take over the company as CEO, but we're not sure when that was written, and we're not sure whether or not he has underlined it to emphasize his choice or crossed it out to suggest, never mind. This news is slowly disseminated, and I put a pin in disseminated because I want to ask you about this. Finally, to the 3 siblings, Kendall, who earlier was taken aback by the continued intimacy of Logan and Marcia in the face of his own estrangement with his father, finally feels like his dad sees him and begins to make his move. He talks to Stewie, then Roman, and Shiv into a plan that involves him taking over as CEO, Roman riding shotgun, and Shiv reluctantly agrees with the understanding that this will be a short-term deal.
Roman is co-CEO, I believe, right?
I thought he was COO.
I thought because they were both COOs, they would step up together.
Okay. Well, we can discuss the org chart. Shiv reluctantly agrees under the provision that this is going to be a 6 to 8 month gig, that they're going to go do ATN Pierce together, that she's across everything.
Yeah. Who wouldn't trust this?
And after the board meeting coronation, Hugo and Carolina come to Kendall and Roman and give them the choice of running with a safe pair of hands narrative, talking about what a great guy Logan was, or leaking to the press that Logan was losing his fastball and that there's a new sheriff in town and that all the problems that used to face Waystar, those were Logan problems. And now they've got this great group of people.
And conversely, too, that anything steadying had come from
those
outside.
Guys. Yeah. Yes, exactly. They reject the latter, but later Kendall goes to Hugo and essentially blackmails him into that very thing. There's some other things going on, Connor stuff, Shiv falls down. Tom and Shiv have a absolutely agonizing Bergman movie taking place during this episode.
Just on the stairs.
I don't know. I can't remember. I should look. I should do my work. What this episode's called?
It's called The Honeymoon States.
I'd like to tell you what this episode should be called. Dark Ken Rises.
Oh, I like that. That has the same initials as you and Sean Fennessy's favorite Batman movie, right?
Yeah. By threatening to pull out the strap-on, he becomes the killer his father always doubted he was.
Yeah, and it's also impressive and a kind of an homage to his father, because using a strap-on is a traditional father-daughter conversation in Hugo's family. So Kendall is taking on a paternal role in that way. He's sort of assuming the mantle, right?
Jeremy Strong's unreal in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. This isn't even a zag.
Are you going to do the thing where you're like, let's only talk about Succession for 8 minutes and I'm just going to say this show is good? Give me your takes.
Oh, I thought you weren't done recapping.
No, I'm done. That's the end of the episode.
Yeah. Well, so what did you feel energy-wise? Because again, this is a remarkable balancing act, because this episode is coming after one of the most momentous episodes, most surprising, episodic, dramatic episodes in recent television history. Obviously, when they were making this, they wouldn't have given any thought to what I just recently saw was like the highest IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes or something rating in the history of episodic television. Yeah. Like it has a perfect rating, I think. But they had to know that this was a really important inflection point for the series, because in a way, this is the reboot. This is what the show is going to be from here until the finish line. And I thought it was interesting that it paused for really only the time when Kendall was cosplaying as me briefly, just sick and alone, before getting into it. And really what I thought was in terms of our reaction to the beginning of last week's episode. And you remember we were talking about how before the first phone call from Tom on the plane, it felt like they had reached the end of something. The jokes weren't landing. The profanity just felt kind of profane and empty and tired. And one thing that was really notable to me was the mojo is back. And that is deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
But absolutely true. You know, that a momentous event has a ripple effect that can give very, very confusing sensations of energy or whatever it is that Roman is doing. But more than anything else, it gives them something to do. It gives them purpose. And shockingly, this was the arc of the episode, it gives these, malign toys, who are these children, agency and priority again. Mm-hmm. They were on the outs.
Some of these malign toys have agency.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could speak about some of the others.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. I also just think broad strokes, I love how, last week we were talking about how the show doesn't really have sex scenes because, Jesse Armstrong doesn't really want to write them.
Yeah.
So that's fine. He can write whatever show he wants to write. He really just wants to write like stage plays almost at this point.
Yes.
Now, the direction by Mark Mylod, this was directed by Lorene Scafaria, who's directed on the show before, does an excellent job. It's very kinetic, it's propulsive. The decisions to go from one room to the other to inspect the china, et cetera, really keeps the sense of propulsion going throughout
Even
the
though
episode.
This is taking place in an apartment.
It's just taking
albeit the biggest apartment in the world, but like it's
so hard to get into
rooms.
these good buildings.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it's just a conversation between these 10 people rotating is really striking. And that the show continues to be kind of just at its best when it's insular, even though, as Jerry says, prime ministers and presidents and royalty, they're all calling, but they're not here. They're not where the action is.
Yeah.
These people need this. They feel more alive than ever with the center of the universe gone. And is that a dead cat bounce? I think that's the question.
Yeah. So your point is really well taken, because some of the words that you've used over the course of your description of the episode resonate with me because I just keep going back to this interview that Jeremy Strong gave at the beginning of the season, where he kind of casually mentioned that this show is often just compared to King Lear, but to him it's Richard III, and it's about this guy who will do whatever it takes to get to this mountaintop that he wants to be on.
Interesting. So it's not about the King Lear where Brian Cox is the star.
Yeah.
It's Richard III where Jeremy Strong is the
star. That's also a really good thing to say, so that like when Brian Cox is calling up Collider to be like, I'd like to do an interview about fucking Jeremy Strong, says this is Richard III, not King Lear. Yeah. But this episode actually had an almost royal, political bent to it. Like there was this actually did feel like we are picking the air.
Like palace intrigue.
Yeah. And it was in a palace.
Yes.
And when Kendall and Roman walk out, there is like almost like a all hail, I think literally somebody says like hail, like Kendall and Roman. There is...
Yeah, it felt like the Great in the sense
exactly.
that there were these halls with people in them.
Yes.
And the people are serving a purpose, but really the purpose is just to be present and to genuflect.
Yeah.
Right?
And because if you start thinking about terms of Shakespeare or certain like a theatricality to it, the show can feel so loose and alive and improvised and free. And like, we know that they'll just do a take where they're like, try something, and maybe we'll use this, and maybe we'll cut together these three things, especially some of the famous dinner scenes. Like we've heard the actors on the show talk about, like, they'll just let you do a take yourself where you're just like playing, And then that winds up in the show and combined with something that Jesse also wrote. But I think because it feels so alive and free, sometimes you forget the precision with which certain words are chosen or certain scenes are constructed in certain ways. And so I really kept going back to the scene between the Sibs where Shiv makes them promise on their dad, right? And I thought that was really perversely funny that the three of them would promise on the name of their tormentor not to torment one another.
Yeah, that's almost doing him a disservice.
And also, did you catch the way Kendall looked at her when they cut to him and he's like, on yesterday, which is like, on one hand, has the meaning of, yes, of course, yesterday was important, and I swear on yesterday that I won't betray you. But it's also like, that was yesterday.
Yeah, well, the same moment was kind of replayed when they first see the piece of paper, which we should talk about in more detail. When he's like, well, sure as shit doesn't say Shiv on that paper, and she's like, it's not even below the surface. It's waiting.
Yeah.
I do want to, before we move on to the specifics of those scenes, I think the idea of the palace intrigue connects to something that I was observing in the episode too, which is there really is a difference between being wealthy and being rich. And it is similar to royalty, I think, to being born in it versus grasping for it, the brass ring. And it was never more apparent than it was in this episode, because the siblings, for all of their many flaws and their ups and downs, have a floor of certainty in terms of what is owed to them and what they deserve. And they carry themselves with it. We saw it last week when it's like, even in this moment, when Hugo has a job to do, he really needs to get Shiv Advil first. That's just what happens. The way that they take ownership of a room and dismiss everyone else in it, there is no wobbling, because no matter what happens today, they're going to be generationally wealthy for the rest of their lives and their children's lives. The disparity between the way they talked about what's happening and the way, you could call them the C-suite, C-suite elite, which crucially Tom is a member of as well, was really telling. It is fleeting for them. You would never hear a Roy say that he is, up really like in over his head on a Greek island with his brother-in-law. You know what I mean? Like Connor buys artifacts and just bought a house for $63 million on a spit handshake. You know what I mean? Like we have he has alluded to some financial precarity in the past, but nothing like that.
Right.
And the way that realization plays on Tom through the episode was incredible. And again, another, Hall of Fame Matthew McFadden performance, because no one has lost more potentially than he has. And the way he speaks, the way his language became, I'm here to serve, the way he just tumbled down the ladder and is looking up again, which is similar to the way he was in the first season, was really striking. None of those other people, even Jerry, who, as she says, has done it before, has ever walked into a room the way Kendall and Roman walk into a room.
Yeah, you're at a wake, you're at this gathering where I think ideally you're supposed to be supporting one another.
Ideally.
And I was struck by how every single time someone is reaching out for human connection, it gets either rejected or it just kind of misses in midair. So you've got Carrie returning, and she's got her pills and she wants to see if there's like her jewelry's upstairs or whatever it is. And Roman like is sort of like, I want to be a human being and help you, but like not like he can't quite like be a hero in that moment. He doesn't even know maybe if he should be, but he's just more like kind of like, I'm sort of in the way of this, but I don't know. And so then you've got Shiv on the stairs after Tom makes his Mr. Darcy speech, and she's just like, okay, great.
What about Greg's hug when he's like, my guys? Like it's just not. That's just not the way anyone
I know.
physically engages with another person.
But it's just like everybody's sort of kind of like feeling around in the dark trying to find one another. And the only moment that I thought, and it's the second time this season that I've been quite moved by an interaction between these two, were Peter Friedman and Jeremy Strong's performances in
Absolutely.
the sometimes scene when he's discovered the piece of paper and everybody else is left and Frank and Kendall stay behind. And it's just like this extraordinary moment where like obviously this guy is something of a surrogate father. And, you know, he made me hate him and then he died is just basically like good summary of all father-son relationships.
Yeah. It's from Oedipus straight to Kendall.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk about Peter Friedman as Frank and also David Rashi as Carl, because this is really
respectfully.
This was really their episode. They were unreal. It's interesting the way you get to see. Let's just using Frank and Peter Friedman's amazing performance as an example of this. He is doing what the family continued to say they were doing. You know, in the last scene at the karaoke bar, and as the further we get from it, the funnier it is that the last Roy family powwow was in a private room at a karaoke bar in the Lower East Side.
Mm-hmm.
Shiv once again trotted out that this isn't personal, this is business. Watch Jerry and Frank and Carl this episode. They worked for this asshole for 4 decades. Their eyes are bone dry.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're just dealing with the present situation because it is 1,000%.
Yeah, but they're also not like it's
business.
Summer vacation, right? They're not like, oh yes, the king is dead.
No,
like now we get to like do things the way we've always wanted.
It's still their job.
Yeah,
it's still a delicate balancing act with these. You know, I forget what specifically what Tom calls them, but like dipshits and whatever.
Oh, screw ups. The kids are screw ups and dipshits.
Yeah, I mean now they the problem was above, and now the problem is below. But either way, the problem is the Roys. You know. Mm-hmm. Frank's balancing act of being clear-eyed and emotionally direct to Kendall and honest, again, 2 episodes in a row, in a way a parent ought to be, but Kendall is very unfamiliar with, is striking, even as he can still be not as broadly cartoonish as some of the others, but he is still, you know, commenting in a joking way that perhaps his hand might get shaky and the document might fall into the toilet. It's a remarkable balancing act.
Yeah, what's the line he has about we always think the ice shelves are going to come, you know, like
yeah.
It's
that's remarkable. And then the Carl of it. I mean, can I feel like every season we just have to take a moment for Mr. Sledgehammer himself.
That scene,
he's 78 years young.
The scene with him, Jerry, and Tom, when he's like, if there's a ring, I'd like to throw my hat in it, and he's just like, oh, okay.
Can I give you a sense of what the story might go? I mean, talk about McFadgen. You mentioned Mr. Darcy. I mean, he was Mr. Darcy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was in Howard's End. And you see him, I watched a clip of him on Fallon, because, you know, big YouTube guy from my sick bed. And he's just a very debonair, straight up and down.
He seems like a lovely dude.
Lovely British guy.
Yeah.
If you, dear listeners, if you watch that scene again, where Carl just reaches into his body like Last of the Mohicans and removes his still beating heart.
It's like gray hair.
Watch Matthew McFadgen's mouth.
I want to know how many takes they did and how many tacos he had to eat.
But also, were they tacos?
Yeah, because she's like, when Jerry's like, you're sick with grief, you might want to put that fish taco down. You're getting melancholy everywhere.
I'm going to go on a limb and say that was a classic J. Smith Cameron ad lib, because I just don't think they were catering fish tacos. You know, this wake did not happen in Rosarito. You know what I mean? But I just mean, watch McFadgen's mouth, because so much of the acting on this show, so much attention is paid towards the verbal. And obviously, with good reason, it's incredibly high-flying and dexterous. But like, what these people do with their bodies. And I don't know how Matthew McFadgen makes his mouth shrink 10 sizes.
Yeah.
So that like, will never speak again. He goes, Jesus, Carl.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
You mentioned, we talked about the scene with the piece of paper. And there's this scenario that the C-suite kind of cooks up where it's like, well, what if this fell in the toilet, or, you know, blew away, or nobody ever saw it? Why do they then tell the kids about it?
Yeah, that was sort of smeared. I mean, my takeaway from that scene largely was modern office companies like Gojo get a lot of shit for like the open floor plan, right?
Sure.
Like just a bullpen. We're all equals here. No offices. I think
no assigned seating.
Amazon Prime just got dinged for that in THR.
That's right.
I would imagine that Waystar Royco has not adopted modern office things.
They do in the ATN bullpen where it's like...
Well, that's because that's just where the news is happening,
Sure.
fair and balanced. What I mean is, the reason I say this is, they're just all over each other anyway. Like, I think it was, to me, the takeaway was just comedy, that it starts with Frank having access to one thing, and then Carl lets himself in. And then Jerry lets himself in. And at that point, it's just like, well...
Well, so the three of them talk about what would happen if no one had ever seen this.
Yes.
I guess my read of why they bring the kids in is by this point, it's like there were only 6 people in the world who knew that Logan had died, and that got out.
Yeah.
So really, there are no secrets.
That's what I mean. And it's mutually assured destruction, right? Like, they're all in it. And so they're fighting for survival. And if they just spread out the problem, then they can maybe all stay afloat. So let's talk about the document.
Okay.
What, as a fan of the show, like, what do you think the intent was?
I think it's a totem for Kendall to do the thing that he wants to do.
Yeah.
Because this is not going to be clean, and this is not going to be
never going
the
to be
Sibs.
clean. Yeah.
And it's the idea, whether he crossed it out or underlined it, it kind of doesn't matter. You know, it's more that, like, at some point you wrote my name down, and at some point you thought I could do this, and it's not Shiv's name, and it's not Roman's name, and it's not Connor's name, and it's not Tom's name or whatever. And that's all he needs. And by the end of the episode, one of the things that I was really struck by was he looks exactly like he looks in the pilot.
Yes.
In this episode. And I kept jotting down the words like hair, because he has the same hairstyle as he had in the first episode. Hair, air, you know?
Oh,
but I don't know what to do with that. Like,
do you
I'm
often
just like,
jot down wordplay?
It wasn't, I was just like, his look has gone from tech bro, you know, pumpkin seed eating Tom Ford guy to sort of business casual morning, but like he looks younger and he looks kind of fresh. And I don't think he's ever smiled that way, like he smiles at Hugo at the end of the episode. He's in control.
Here's my take. Of course it should fucking be him. That's my take. I'm just purely with the text up to this point. Has he made a few mistakes? Sure.
Yeah.
Who among us? But of the people who are throwing their hats in the proverbial ring, it's unquestionably Kendall who is suited for this. He is only suited for this. And I think in some ways that's what the show has been telling us, right? That this is the only thing that he has ever wanted. It is the only thing that he has ever pointed his life toward. And every other thing he has done has been bad, bordering on catastrophic. And in the midst of this, he seems like this is insane. I know that there are many episodes left, so I imagine there will be some zags to this. But like, he's the only one suited to do this job going forward. He's the only one focused on it. And I agree with you that the Hugo thing is a sign that he is ready to do it. He's not going to turn it in to MSNBC. He's not going to turn it into Pierce. That was never what this was going to be. And I do think that if you strip away some of the other stuff, like emotional attachment or enjoyment of the characters, like, you know, as they remind her, like, Shiv still hasn't really worked for the company. She did some daddy busy work, I guess.
I mean, we could talk about the Shiv part.
It should be him.
I noted with interest that when they're in the room, the three of them, and they're describing like what the scenario is going to be and how it's going to be, and he very purposely, even though obviously he doesn't know what the meaning is, he goes 6 to 8 months, like her pregnancy.
Oh yeah,
and it's just like, it just feels like all of a sudden she is shunted out. And Sarah Snook does this amazing little thing when she's like making them promise. She grabs her stomach and like kind of like almost heaves a little bit.
Her bodily performance of being alone is really striking.
Yeah.
She and Roman are not in good shape, in opposite directions.
Sure.
I don't believe pre-grieving is a thing. You know, I haven't fully studied it. Doesn't seem legit to me. Seems like there's another shoe about to drop. And just her, what's interesting, about some of the events of the episode is your point that Kendall's behavior with Hugo proves that he has a lot of his father in him. I think Shiv's response to Tom also proves she has a lot of her father in her, and it's not a good thing. There's a pridefulness, there's a stubbornness, there is a almost visceral anger,
hurting the people closest to you.
Well, there's a visceral anger at emotion, that it is an invader in the body, that is weakness, and that it is somehow better or stronger to walk away, to button up, and that it takes a very specific type of person to exist that way.
Yeah.
And she doesn't. I don't think she is that person.
What did you make of Roman's reaching out for Carrie?
I think
amazing scene, by the way. Just Marcia fucking godfathering in.
But also the construction of it too, where it's just like when Kendall arrives and he's like, what does he say? Where's Carrie? And Roman's like, in Marcia's trunk in a sarcophagus. Yeah. Speaking of wealth versus rich, I put her in a taxi to the subway to go back to her little apartment.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
tough for all of us who can't afford to take a taxi to the subway.
I know. I was like, wow, luxury.
Yeah.
Oh, did I misread it?
Yeah.
One of my favorite aspects of the Roman character is that he has the right intentions, but he has no modeling. Like, he wrote his dad, like he did write his dad on his birthday.
Yeah.
He wants to be a real boy more than any of these other people.
The perfect example of what you're just describing is like, he says to them at one point, like, this feels good. And I'm like, it doesn't sound like it feels good to you. Why are you saying those words together?
Yes. He has the...
And it's not good. You guys can't trust one another.
He has the crunchiest exterior and the gooeyest center of any of these characters. And I just made myself hungry. But he wants to be real.
Yeah.
And just physically does not know how to do it, emotionally does not know how to do it, and is certainly not encouraged by anyone he has ever met or been in proximity with of how to be a real person. So I was kind of touched by that too, because it gave him something. I mean, one thing we noticed beginning in the last episode was the kind of, they are incapable of letting any moment pass without jockeying. Who's sadder? Who's more in the moment? Who's more accepting of reality? And in that moment, Roman's looking around being like, all of you are savage monsters, and I am not. I am not.
Yeah.
In this moment. But of course he is. I mean, it just wait till the next page to turn.
The line of the episode to me in some ways, my favorite line reading of the episode happens in the same scene. It was when Stewie says to Kendall, "What's in it for me?"
Yeah, that was real. Nicholson is the Joker.
Yeah,
reading.
I liked that. But Ken saying, "I'm twin track. I'm alive, but I'm dead."
Yeah, I kind of thought that was going to be the intro today for me.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like he's sort of like is able to compartmentalize that and be these other people. The only thing, and this is not like a concern, but we mentioned like, what makes them decide to distribute the paper. And I think over the course of the season, you could kind of, it's kind of like pin the tail on the donkey as to how the kids are feeling about the Gojo deal in any given moment of an episode.
Yeah.
Are you trying to undermine it? Are you trying to extract more money? Are you trying to torture your father? Are you trying to make it sure it happens so that you get your money?
Yep.
For as satisfying as I felt like the end of this episode was, I hope, and I guess I hope that it like these last few episodes give them narrative clarity so that everybody is like, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And not like, next episode on Succession, we're just going to pretend like the last 15 minutes of Succession didn't happen or something.
Well, I'm curious. There's no way that the harmony is going to last.
Sure.
So I think it'll be interesting to put that pre-question that you just voiced to consider it going forward, because it's going to shatter. And will it feel like we're just rerunning it, or will it feel natural and tied into the emotional stuff?
Yeah.
The Gojo scene was maybe my favorite in the episode. With the
Oscar?
Oscar.
Yeah.
Oscar and Lucas's
Well, it's our
phone.
retreat. Yeah.
So again, Chris, of the two of us, you've worked most closely with Swedish tech conglomerates.
Uh-huh.
They're pretty serious about their retreats, right? Like the schedule.
I'm going on one in a month. Yeah.
So let's hope we got to make sure that nothing major happens in any of our lives around that, right?
Like the end of Succession.
Because it's not changing.
Yeah.
Is it happening at the same time?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Have you mentioned that to Daniel or Oscar on Daniel's phone, that maybe we could just bump it by a week because of the Succession finale?
No, I think it's going to be more of a like me at 4 a.m. at some place in Europe being like, it's Andy Greenwald.
but crying a little bit. But maybe the sun won't set there at all. So
That's true. That's true.
It'll still
Long
be
days.
bright. I love when he's just like, do you know what happened yesterday? He's like, yeah, a bad one.
I don't think that's consistent with all Swedes' attitude towards.
I would like to put a hard pivot. I'm not saying that is.
There's also that amazing dance where it seems to be a lot of like, let's table this for a week, and it's like, no, we're not going to table it for a week. Like all the like sort of these sort of not political, but like these business gestures that happen where you're like, oh, what does this mean? What is the real meaning of this?
I love that, and I think that also was evidence of what the thing that Logan Roy said made him great, and that other people said made him great was his his racism, and when they were parsing the obituary, it was so good. Keen business savvy, threw phones at people, but that he could read the intangibles, right? That like he can have a phone call like that, and he can like he has a dowsing rod. Like he understands which ways the winds are blowing and he responds accordingly. And he was pretty much never wrong. These three are always wrong.
Yeah.
In reading the mood, in understanding the way things are going and what it means for them. They are always, at least up to this point, not quite up to it and making a mistake. So I thought that scene was interesting in that context, and particularly interesting in terms of, I think, the inevitable trip to Sweden. It's coming.
What else?
It's such a... I just... This is not a new Succession take, but the bench is so deep that Zoe Winters is Carrie.
And Marcia coming back after...
That Marcia comes back.
Yeah.
That we have Stewie ready to come back. That even Larry Pine wheeled in for this.
Oh, yeah.
Hope Davis.
That's right.
Like, just to be in the... Stephen Root was in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that one just felt like they went to craft services and like he was just visiting everyone at HBO.
I think his
and
agent
like,
talked to Justin Kirk's agent about what can happen when you're on 2 HBO shows in 48 hours.
Although they were both on the previous... Stephen Root was on that episode the last season as well. But like, it's such a luxury that they have to be able to just call people like that and just show up for a scene. I also do want to call out, the actors get a lot of the attention, the writers get a lot of the attention deservedly, but like the production design... Someone had to dummy up the Logan piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Someone had to show to Jesse and the other EPs.
Zoe Winters did an interview with Vulture where she talked about knowing exactly what was going to be spilling out of her bag.
Right.
Like the prop people are like, she's on these medications. Here's all the stuff that's in her, like her keys and stuff.
Specifically, though, what I mean is, They had probably 5 or 6 versions of an underline / crossout, and the specificity of that.
Yeah,
and
it's pencil.
When I watched the episode again, I paused to look at it. I'm like, yes, this is 50-50.
Yeah,
this is exactly 50-50, and they took the time and they made that.
Yeah, because it like starts under and then goes into cross,
swoops over, and like that.
Like, is this? Did he cross out Roy and write in Kendall Gill, famous University of Illinois shooting guard?
I do think that one of the most lasting bits of genius of this show is that the greatest sums of wealth or accrued capital in the world come down to the dumbest things.
Mm-hmm.
They come down to missed iPhone calls. They come down to pencil underlines / crossouts. That it's all
it's
farce.
Accidentally forwarded emails. It's satellites exploding.
I
guess that's not really a common office faux pas, but...
Well, it is for them.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Willa's extended family?
Well, let me take that and flip it on you.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you these 2 last questions.
Yeah.
Did you miss Logan, dramaturgically speaking? And how seriously do we have to take Connor? The 2 are related because they are getting like a pretty decent wedge of screen time now. The Connor-Willa relationship, Connor's presidential aspirations, Connor now. Let's just take it. If I described what these kids do to you, without telling you anything about their personalities or their past fuck-ups or anything. And I was like, well, one of them is the COO of the company and has blown up a satellite. The other has never really worked for the company and kind of did some work for a politician. This other one went to rehab a bunch and has tried to destroy the company multiple times. And then this other guy just got married. He owns his father's house and he's running for president.
Yeah.
Isn't Connor the most serious person on this show?
Well, I think that what you're picking up on is something that we talked about last week, which is somehow Connor is the most serious human being.
Yeah.
He's a joke, but even in this episode, they still, Alan Ruck is so good, and they give him a lot of funny business to do, about they also say it's smart to avoid realtor fees. But every time they ask him a question, like how he's doing emotionally or whatever, he's very honest about it. He seems very in touch with it and okay. But again, that's the central crux of the thing. I think being a more successful human on the show almost takes you out of the running to be a successful
well, I don't necessarily expect him to take over the company or whatever, but I just wonder if you take away the 25 to 40% of airspace that Brian Cox occupied, that Logan occupied as a character, and you are replacing that with, say, a little bit more Frank, Jerry, Carl stuff, Hugo, Carolina, Stewie's back, he's in the mix. I don't know, there's still a lot of playing time left for Connor, weirdly.
Is this Ewing theory?
It's not Ewing theory. I'm just saying that, like, I always kind of looked at him as this punchline to the episodes where it's just like, bring Connor in, he'll be disappointed that the family therapy isn't working or that his irrigation system isn't working or whatever. And now all of a sudden with the presidential election, it just seems like he's consequential to the narrative of the show.
Connor's Mikhail Bridges.
Yeah.
Really, really good, in a role and then ready to step up when necessary. You asked a really important question, I think, for the show going forward. And
so
I want to
Connor got traded to the Pierces and all of a sudden his usage rate went up.
Yeah, sorry, Naomi. Like you're basically benched. I'm curious your thoughts on this too, because I did not miss Logan Roy in this episode. One thing that I was thinking about in retrospect is they have been experimenting with reduced playing time or with getting him off the show for a while now. Not just in the sense of like he had piss madness and was like off screen.
Yeah. He's often separated from the rest of the cast because they've been estranged.
Yes. And we talked about this, I think, slightly critically last season in the early stages where the show was basically, he was omniscient and his machinations were happening off screen and filtering down. And so everybody was reacting to whatever way he had caused the winds to blow, which kind of neutered him as an as a character with emotional agency of his own. I remember that in the early parts of last season, he was just sort of this omniscient god that was on Mount Olympus causing stuff to happen. I feel like in a way that was Jesse and the writers seeing what it felt like, pushing him off, marginalizing him. Because we know, and I'm sure this has been said in interviews that he's done, maybe I haven't listened to the official podcast, but I'm sure that it's been brought up. And we know this from talking to people.
Interviews that Jesse's done? Or
yes,
just,
Jesse.
If it's Brian.
Has he done any interviews? That we know this from talking to people at HBO. Like, this was the plan.
Brian Cox banned from The Watch, by the way.
Whoa!
Well, just because he's done too many interviews, If he came on The Watch, I would only ask him about Manhunter.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I would only talk to him about Rushmore.
Good.
And McDonald's commercials. And X2. He's really good.
Oh, that's right.
He's real good.
General Stryker.
Stryker, man.
Yeah.
That's a great movie. Should we just do a COT 15 on that?
Wait, are you serious? X2? You're into that?
Fucking love that movie. Yeah.
Oh, that's the one that has the good reputation. It's Last Stand. That's like one of the all-time stinkers.
Yeah. No, X2 is really good. Kaya, you like X2?
Can't say I've seen that.
Yeah, there you go.
I needed to know.
Yeah. She's gotta turn on her mic.
I
pull
know.
it over to her. So if you're gonna make her do that, you gotta.
Do you know what that was?
Ask Kaya, did you see Last Chance Kitchen?
That was a trademark Russillo pause. just gathering the ball to make the first move to the hoop. We know from people at HBO that this was always the plan. It wasn't like Jesse called the executives and was like, so some news, I'm going to be killing off Logan Roy early in the season. It was always going to be sudden. He was always going to use the element of surprise. And I would imagine, and we could hopefully get the chance to ask him this, he probably floated this in his room at the beginning of season 2. He probably floated this at the beginning of season 3. Both because maybe he's always trying to find a way to figure out the shape of the show and when it was going to end, but also wanted this show to happen and have this show without him. So I was really stunned by how propulsive and fluid and consistent and exciting it felt watching everyone sweep to try to fill the hole. And to your point, I mean, if we were going to use an NBA metaphor, like you could not possibly have a deeper bench. Like even reaching into calling Stewie off of the G League Ignite,
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've got Skarsgård and Justin Kirk and God knows who else waiting in the wings to come back into the show if they need him,
It really is a reminder that as recently as 2 weeks ago, we were saying, we've seen some of these things before. These are beats that have happened before, and we praise it because it's done brilliantly.
That's why I brought up I don't want any more narrative reversals. I want this to be what Kendall is doing. I don't want him to be like,
now I don't want it anymore.
Now I don't want it, or maybe it should be Rome, or I need to actually he grabbed something there, like both in terms of narrative, but also like giving that performance, like now like a tunnel to go through. And I hope he fucking stays in the darkness.
I agree. I think it's a feature bug or lemonade out of lemons thing to say that when the show was repetitive in terms of its emotional relationships, it was brilliant because that's what familial relationships often are. You continue to hold out, you hold hope, and you just run at it again and again. And it's whether you want to say it's Lucy with a football or it's just a brick wall that you run into, there's something in us that keeps that hope alive. Like all three of these kids thought their father was going to one day wake up and say, I'm proud of you and I love you.
Yeah.
They all thought that up until, and in some ways they woke up the day of this episode still thinking that. And their behavior, you can see that, and there's a version of watching this episode thinking that everything that they do is because they think they're still being watched. And you could go through the moments we talked about, like Shiv staying strong and walking away from Tom's sort of mushy entreaties. You could look at Roman trying to take care of their dad's girlfriend and show her some decency or old school chivalry or whatever it is that he's doing. Or Kendall offering to take out the strap on their head of corporate PR. Like they're still wanting his approval, and it might work out for some of them. But at the end of that road, and this is looking ahead, at the end of this journey for Kendall, let's say he gets it, and let's say he crushes it. Let's say he crushes it the way he's crushing grief. His dad's not waiting at the end of the season to be like, good job, son, want to have a catch.
Maybe that was the point.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't want that. You have to kill him, not get a hug from him. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. New Year's resolutions are fun the first couple of weeks. Then you kind of maybe conveniently forget about them halfway through January. No shame. It happens to us all. But this year I have a foolproof plan, at least when it comes to saving money. Just switch to Mint Mobile and you're done. Goal accomplished, because for a limited time, their wireless plans are $15 a month when you buy a 3-month plan. The great thing about Mint Mobile is there's no jaw-dropping monthly bills or unexpected overages, and all plans come with unlimited talk and text. Get this new customer offer today at mintmobile.com/watch. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
I've got kids, and that means it's always about them. But I need support too. That's where Ollie comes in. With their delightful, hardworking gummies, my partner and I can actually get a good night's sleep, so we'll both stand a chance of managing our stress responses. Even when the kids are doing parkour in the living room, discover Ollie vitamins and supplements. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
It's hard not to add a side of hot, crispy hash browns to your favorite McDonald's breakfast. It's even harder not to eat said hash browns before you get home. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Can we start talking about Barry?
I can't wait to talk about Barry.
Because I think that this is a good point to jump into Barry. 2 episodes went up last night for the final 4th season.
Love that about TV. Love
when there's a surprise second episode up. It's like essentially the length of a long episode.
But stop being stingy, TV. You know what? Share.
Because the first episode, after you get through the previously on Barry, is like 23 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the second episode's longer. A lot of reversals in this one. Now, I'm using this term kind of loosely, but this is also something that Hader talked about with Deadline, where it's essentially like when we're talking about it, I'm saying you start your story going in one direction, the audience gets invested with a certain pattern of behavior or decision making on the part of characters, and then sometimes for the sake of the show, characters change their mind and go back. They go back on this, they go back on that. So this episode of Barry starts with the exception of Barry and Fuchs, like people sort of scattered to the wind.
Yeah.
Hank's in New Mexico with Cristobal, and
looking fabulous.
Sally's in Joplin, Missouri. Cousineau is trying not to get too famous for this case. Janet Moss's dad is sort of saying, let's keep our powder dry here. It's like, this is very sad, but it's all kind of there. And then over the course of basically 1.5 episodes, everybody changes track and sort of, I don't even know if you would call it reverts to form, but a lot of what this show is seemingly about now is nature versus nurture, is this idea of like, who is somebody inherently and what are the things that they are that are conditioned by the world, that are creations of the world. And I think when you're watching a TV show, I don't know how much it would have affected me if I just watched the first episode and then next week I'd watch the second episode, but it felt a little whiplashy.
Yes.
This is a deeply psychological show now. Like a lot of this stuff is happening inside of people's heads, a lot of tight close-ups of people in anguish,
Yes.
And it's becoming less and less verbal with the exception, I think, of the Hank Cristobal stuff. Like it's a very kind of internal show now.
I agree with you.
Although obviously deeply cinematic and amazing to look at. And also like we've done the like, is something wrong with Barry thing before? And then we're like, never mind, it's the best show of the last 10 years.
I think this is one of the best shows of the last 10 years. I think we were joking last night about putting up too many episodes because, come on, think of the podcasters.
I just have a lot, like
it's also
that was
playoffs.
a really good fucking Suns game, man. I was busy.
But I actually was annoyed about it because I watched the first episode on a screener earlier in the day. And I was so blown away by this episode.
You're also so proud of
Yikes.
yourself for being prepared.
I was really pleased.
Yeah,
okay,
you were I mapped this out to the minute.
And also, I was still probably pretty roided out, to be honest with you. I was just crushing protein bowls and watching 3 screens at once.
Yeah. When they pull you in front of the congressional hearing on television criticism, and they're like, "Have you ever?"
And I just snapped 3 pencils at once.
Yeah, taken any supplements to aid your television viewing?
Yeah. The answer is yeah, and I would do it again. All of that is true. But I was also a little bit let down because the second episode of this season is a brilliant episode of Barry. That is absolutely in tune with what it is now and what it wants to be and where it's going. The first episode was astonishing. Like, I was so impressed by this. I was moved by it. I was surprised by it. I thought it was art. I really thought that the directorial choices that Bill Hader made were stunning. And stunning in the sense that you could tell, but we also know from who he is in interviews that he is a real film rat, that he loves cinema.
Yes.
He has a deep recall for the scenes and the images and the cinematography and color patterns that have moved him. And you can feel that in the sense that when watching this episode, you're like, oh, he likes Buñuel or he likes Fellini or like all the different things that he's mushing into this one thing, as you can with all great artists. Like everyone's just an amalgamation of their influences. But what was so stunning to me about it was the light and depth and confident touch with which he switched between them.
Mm-hmm.
There was no heavy hand of influence. It was completely light, while really kind of not pioneering. I don't want to overrate one 26-minute episode, although I think it's hard to overrate. But it was a completely different storytelling language that we're used to seeing on TV. The scenes were...
And are you referring to a lot of the like sort of surreal elements of like Sally being in the jail yard, recreating the first time he sees her, basically?
Yes, but then also the way that the way the sound design goes from her being asleep on the plane to being awake on the plane, and the wide vistas of the flashback just effortlessly go into the prison yard and the FBI box.
Yeah.
These sort of these very strong aesthetic choices that in the wrong hands would be jarring or affected.
Is this a confessional booth? What is this? Yeah.
It was just really, really stunning to me. Sound design, editing, all of it. And the scenes were so short. They were just these like little tone poems. There was such confidence in it. And you know what it really I've been you should say something, because otherwise I'm just going to keep going. But remember our favorite show from a couple of years ago, Le Bureau?
Mm-hmm.
This is relevant. This isn't like the Tanizaki book that I was talking about last week.
I
promise.
enjoyed that. It was like in the top 8 things you said, but you had one thing last week where
that
I
you
was
liked.
like, holy shit, this guy.
I know.
Yeah, the moon thing.
I got nothing like that this week. I'm just gonna.
That's all right. I had the hair air thing.
That was good.
You know?
I'm just gonna flood the zone with stuff.
I don't actually have a point. I just think that those words sound alike.
Yeah, they really do. They're really, there's just one small difference between them that, I'll leave to the listeners to puzzle out.
Yeah. But if I'm like Charlie from It's Always Sunny and that's just how I spell it.
I think that's also
hair,
fine.
that's the same word.
Right?
Yeah.
It also means rabbit. So we love this show. You guys should watch it. It's streaming on AMC Plus in French, I think. French spy show, absolute genius. One of the things that was really, really remarkable about
George Clooney's remaking it.
Is that, we'll see, but it was announced as part of the new little bit of Showtime seasoning in your Paramount Plus. I was sorry, I don't mean to be snarky. There was no writer or anything announced, so who knows how far away that actually is. One of the most remarkable things about that show is that showrunner Eric Rochant, who was on our podcast and was really cool about it, like all showrunners, had a very specific vision for the show. He was in control of it. He wrote the storylines. He wrote a lot of the scripts, et cetera, but really felt like he didn't trust himself to end the show purely because he was too in love with the characters or too fond of them. So he did the very radical thing of bringing in very prominent French director Jacques Audiard and saying, I've driven the car up to the precipice. It's up to you to Thelma and Louise off of it, and I stand by your artistic choices.
Okay. That
was his vision of what he could do with the show. What I feel about Barry is that Bill Hader did that to himself.
Yeah.
Like the journey from season 1 to 4 is really unprecedented in terms of watching someone grow, as not just as a performer, because that probably is underrated what he's doing on the show. And he probably would underrate it himself and privilege the other things he's doing. But in terms of risk-taking and just taking chances, pushing things, seeing how far this rubber band can go before it snaps. And I just think we're in uncharted territory. Because remember when this was a very, very clever show that was
what if a hitman became an actor?
But it was very inside jokey about like North Hollywood and wanting to make it. And that was 100% true to what the show was. And now it is 100% irrelevant, except not. Because what it did is stripped away everything.
Well, and every season ends with them putting themselves in an impossible place. How do you have a light comedy where you love this guy who's trying to go from hitman to actor if he kills one of the truly good people on the show?
Story-wise, yes, but what it's also done is it just stripped away all the nonsense like some sort of Zen priest, and it's just like, oh, people are animalistic and vicious and just want to be loved more than anything. They just want to be loved, and sometimes we try to become actors, to become famous, to fill that hole, or sometimes we kill people because our father figure told us to, but at the end, we're just these like gaping black holes like they are in Succession, and that first episode, I'm just really shaken up by it.
And the second episode?
Was great.
Okay.
Great episode of television.
I thought you were coming with but then in the second episode.
No, but the second episode had some of the stuff that at the beginning of the last season jarred me more, like the Dave and Buster's bit, but
that was really fucking funny.
But it was so funny.
And the fact that like they're doing this like 360 pan with Cristobal and Hank doing it, and then Hank has to like run back to be in the right blocking for the scene. But it's like he's doing it on purpose. It's not like Bill is like, oh, now he needs to be over here.
We don't need to do clickbait stuff and be like, one thing is good and one thing isn't. But these 2 episodes of this show, I think, are my favorite thing from this year. I think like it's just jumped.
Way to go, dog. I was trying to be just like,
no.
Sometimes, I sometimes like throw stuff out like just for tension,
Yeah, no, I know.
And I do find the plotting of TV shows, especially the more if I'm watching a ton of them, which, I feel like I do, to be a little bit like, we're doing this to extend the story. You're changing your mind about something. And so in the course of 2 episodes, I think Fuchs is going to set Barry up, falls in love with Barry again.
Yeah.
Then gets betrayed by Barry. That
was a huge turn. Yeah.
Barry forgives Fuchs, fucks Fuchs over. Hank needs to break Barry out, decides he needs to kill Barry. Sally hates Barry, goes to prison to see him and decides that she's probably like only safe with Barry. Cousineau is like, I've done something purely good with my life now. And now how can I corrupt that by trying to become famous off of the back of it?
But the thing when he gets caught at Cantor's doing the...
Can I tell you something about that shot of Cantor's?
Yeah.
You know, I go to Cantor's not infrequently.
Yeah. Because
Hader
you're a hype
does
beast.
this
You're
thing-
always up at Supreme first.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
What's the weird sex shop next to Cantor's?
Don't look at me and ask me that on mic.
Have
I
you
don't
never
know.
been to Cantor's?
I go to Cantor's. I love Cantor's.
But there's that leather store next to it. I respect it because I don't feel like that happens enough. Now everything is like vape shops. I feel like we need more
leather
out tray.
stores.
Like there's some darkness here, but it's not just about like smoking bowls.
But you can also get Rugala.
Yeah,
I get it.
That's like New York has that. You know, like when you're walking down the street,
Sex
you're
shops
like,
and bagels?
deli, sex shop, right?
Dwayne Reed.
Anyway, my point is that Bill has Hader has such like a very specific view and vision of this California that this show is set in.
Yep.
That even Cantor's looks different to me. And I've fucking been to Cantor's, and it's like I don't spend as much time in the valley as this show does. But I was like, oh my God, like I don't even know if I've ever seen the sky look that way at Cantor's.
Yeah, the light and the sky, it is completely aesthetically integrated show. And then also just, it's these little touches that the real ones, the great ones know how to do.
Yeah.
Like Patrick Fischler, great actor, loved him on Mad Men, love him every time he shows up, Mulholland Drive. He's the Vanity Fair writer.
Yeah.
That's a great casting choice. That makes really interesting sense. And when you see him, you're interested. His face, his reaction, Cousineau soaked in sweat.
As he does this one-man performance of all of Barry.
There will be his only comment on the matter.
Oh my God. This is all off the record.
It was so... It's so funny. But I also I'm impressed by two things. One is it's really quite a double feature of fucked up parenting to watch these episodes, like in the Sally stuff and Joplin. I mean, those scenes were viscerally hard.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty funny too.
And really funny though. That's the thing.
We're having the panic attack in the car and the mom being like, can I get an order of tater tots?
But that's what I mean. There's different ways to do this. And both Succession and Barry are master classes in being like, we've been to therapy, guys.
Yeah.
We understand the stakes here and like where the fences fall and the terrain. And we understand the damage generationally that we do to each other and these patterns we're stuck into. And she went back to Joplin, just like we were talking about how Kendall still wants to be loved. Like they keep doing it, but you can be funny about it. And you can be funny without making fun. Like Sally's in a nightmare. Sally's also ludicrous.
Yeah.
It's an incredible balancing act. And to your point, though, about the reversals, I agree about that. There's a version of it where you kind of become a fan of the managing. Like, I know I've been doing a lot of sports metaphors lately, but it's because I've been listening to a lot of sports podcasts because I've been driving a lot. Full disclosure. But like you could think about like Phillies manager Rob Thompson, who's just like, I have 14 clods who can only strike out or hit home runs, and I have to try to make this work into some sort of coherent narrative. So far this season, not going great. But you could similarly...
Well, two of those clods have deeply injured themselves.
One, yes, that's true. You're very wait and see about baseball.
I just hate it when people are like, these guys eat shit. It's like, well, their two best players suck or hurt, you know?
Oh, Trey Turner's hurt?
I'm just saying Reese and Bryce being out. Let's just,
I know.
Throws off the whole item.
Listen, you could look at Barry or any kind of serialized show like that. How would you like it if
I put you on a pitch clock without telling you, you know?
You tried that 2 weeks ago and people got very freaked out. People were talking. You could look at any serialized show or a show like Barry that way, being like, well, all right, well, we've put everyone here and now I've ended up with a show with a character like NoHo Hank, who was supposed to die in the pilot, and Cristobal, who really worked and popped, and that made sense for us, and we've got to fold him in. How are we going to balance this and have this all work narratively in a way that is satisfying? Because we really just making it up as we went along. You could praise the management of it, because in small strokes, you see the stitching, and you're like, the Sally visit is what gives Barry another false dream to fall in love with, which causes him to walk away from the father figure love and do everything because he thinks,
betray everyone for this person.
Because he's like, I'm going to get her with me, right? We can have a picket fence and witness protection program or whatever it's going to be. You get into the fine details, it works.
Yeah.
And you could be like, good management. But I also just think that sometime during the pandemic, like Hader tapped into some different vein.
Well, I don't know how many shows we'll ever get that the third season was written and ready to go. The pandemic happens, and he rewrites the third season, and who knows what happens to the fourth season because of that.
But he had it done also, right? Like, I think that
they decided to do it concurrently, the writing of it, but I think he rewrote the third season before they went into production on it.
Right. I just think that
we should probably listen to Bill talk to Sean Fennessy on the Prestige TV podcast to hear about this more.
It's a great plug.
Yeah.
I think we should. But I just, separate and apart from how much I enjoyed this, and I clearly really loved and enjoyed it, I just think that it's so emblematic of such amazing, rare things in TV, of watching artistic growth happen in real time, of taking real chances but having mastery over them when you take them. Nothing feels sloppy. Nothing feels out of sorts. It's earned everything. Just that to have a character as broadly comic as NoHo Hank, and then have his nightmare in that premiere, where he's once again chained with the tiger, but Barry is there, and what Barry means for him, and be able to make that serious. All the sort of things that a year ago, we were in this, we certainly weren't in this room a year ago, but whenever the season 3 premiered, we were Zooming it, and we were like, is it too funny and also sometimes sad?
Wasn't it? That's just 2022. We weren't, I saw you in 2022.
We saw each other.
We didn't do in-person pods. Yeah,
literally in this room.
In this room. Yeah.
And all that time, Kaya could have watched X2. Just a lot of downtime, Kaya. Just saying.
Yeah, what were you doing?
But yeah, that was really wrong, because it was building to something, in a really, really interesting way. It's crazy that these shows are back to back with the third best show on television.
AM to PM.
Well, that's Mondays. Yeah. No, the third best show was 100 Foot Wave, man.
We can't get to 100 Foot Wave today.
Whew. God, that's good too.
But we have a lot of stuff to talk about. I kind of want to save the Max stuff for Thursday.
Yeah, that's fine.
Little state of the indie. I feel like, are we over leveraged on HBO?
On this podcast?
Yeah.
We got Mrs. Davis coming.
That's true. Peacock coming through. And Top Chef. We still talk about that.
We have to talk about Top Chef.
Got a lot of opinions on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, has anyone ever made a sandwich before? That's one of my questions. I could do 10 minutes on that.
Tom fucked everybody up by being like, make it be like commensurate with this Downton Abbey. Like, with the manor, yeah.
Oh.
Just like fucking let them cook, dude. Don't be like, oh, and by the way, it has to be as nice as this place.
I don't think they've ever had a sandwich before. We can get into the sandwich gate.
Okay. Thursday, we're going to talk about sandwiches. We're going to talk about surfing. We're going to talk about
Max.
No longer HBO. RIP.
I think it's good. People can wait a week for our
And
hot
we're
take.
also going to talk about True Detective Night Country and how you're coming to the snow-capped mountains with me.
Has any trailer ever been more made for you? So every so often, there's one of these things.
I was thinking we could do something fun, which is rewatch season 1 together.
Wow. That's what you were thinking?
What would you consider that me cashing in if I asked you to do that with me?
Well, considering you watched a Miyazaki movie for me, which, we all appreciated. That was really cool. You're definitely in a position to ask me to watch something.
Remember when you were like, dude, my car won't start on Sunset, and I just came and like thugged it out with you and got your keys and stuff?
That is true. On mic, Chris is tough as nails, but off mic, you'll do anything. You're teddy bear.
Thanks to Kaya McMullen for producing us. It's great to have her in the studio. It's great to see you. I'm so glad you're feeling better.
Thanks. Yeah, the drugs worked. Good job, science.
Let's just wrap it up there. And shout out to all the sex shops that are persevering in this economy.
Yeah, I mean, should they start advertising on this podcast?
That was the sort of foundational, that was like one of the first podcast advertising staples was sort of sexually explicit toys and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Remember they used to be on like Marin?
Yeah, Marin used to do a lot of, was it like Adam and Eve or something?
Yeah. No free ads. Don't throw that out there. You never know.
Bleep that, Kaya, please.
See you Monday. All right, Thursday. Yeah.
Wait, am I going to get sick again? That was freaky. I'll see you Thursday.